The microphone screeched with feedback as Julian Rhodes ripped it from the host's trembling hand. 500 of the city's most powerful people fell silent in an instant. Champagne glasses froze mid-toast. Conversations died on lips painted in expensive shades of red, and Vivian Mercer stood at table 17, her blood turning to ice as every phone in the ballroom pointed at her, weapons ready to fire. She knew that walk, that confident stride toward the stage, that smile that looked charming to everyone else, but made her stomach twist with a fear she thought she had buried years ago. Julian Rhodes, the man who had spent 4 years systematically dismantling every piece of her identity, the man she had escaped with nothing but the clothes on her back and wounds invisible to everyone, herself, and now here he was, standing under crystal chandeliers in a room full of billionaires and society queens, ready to finish what he started. Have you ever had someone from your past show up at the worst possible moment? Someone who knew exactly which words would cut deepest? Someone who had studied your weaknesses like a map and memorized every route to your destruction? That was Julian, and he was just getting started. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice poured through the speakers like honey laced with poison. I apologize for interrupting tonight's festivities, but I believe the distinguished guests at this event deserve to know the truth about someone standing among them, someone who has fooled you all. The whispers started immediately. Heads turned, eyes searched. Vivian felt the weight of 500 curious stares beginning to find her, to land on her emerald gown, her carefully styled hair. Frozen expression, Vivian Mercer, Julian continued, his eyes locking onto hers across the ballroom with surgical precision. Or should I say Vivian Ashworth now? Tell me, sweetheart, how long did you practice that grieving widow routine before you hooked your billionaire? The room gasped. Phones tilted for better angles. Red recording lights blinked like hungry eyes. Vivian's throat closed completely. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but stand there, while the man who had controlled her for 4 years took control of the room narrative, of her entire life. 4 years. I gave this woman everything. Julian's voice cracked with practiced emotion. 4 years of supporting her failing restaurant, 4 years of believing her lies. And how did she repay me? By planning her escape the moment she found someone with a bigger bank account. That is not true. The words screamed inside Vivian's head but couldn't find their way to her lips. That is not what happened. That is not who I am. Julian had always been better at this, at twisting reality until everyone saw his version, at making himself the victim while she became the villain in a story she never wrote. He held up his phone, the screen with what she knew would be fales vis messages, Uli puntis botu alipe, secti haulu, while she was still sharing my bed. The whispers became murmurs, became open conversation. Gold, digar, the potonist, ferrit, the what, voti, violite through the air like poison gas. This was it. This was how her new life ended. No, with a quiet dissolution of her arranged marriage, but with public humiliation broadcast to millions. Her family's restaurant would never recover. Her father's medical bills would go unpaid. Everything she had sacrificed, everything she had endured, everything she had hoped for, would crumble under the weight of Julian's lies. And then a voice cut through the chaos, like a blade through silk. That is quite enough. Before we continue, if you are new here, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because what happens next in this story will leave you absolutely speechless. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single moment. Dominic Ashworth rose from his seat, like a force of nature given human form. Vivian had been married to this man for 4 months, and in all that time she had never seen him like this. The cold, distant businessman who barely looked at her across the breakfast table had vanished. In his place stood someone dangerous, someone powerful, someone absolutely furious. The room fell silent again, but this was a different kind of silence. The first had been the silence of spectres watching a car. Watch. This was the silence of prey recognizing a predator. Dominic moved through the crowd with purpose, his designer suit somehow making him look more lithe rather than civilized. People stepped aside without being asked. Shake last, as guests created a path they sensed he required, and when he reached side, his hand found the small of her back with a touch that sent electricity through her entire body. He had never touched her like this before, never touched her at all outside of public appearances that required it. Their marriage was a business arrangement, cold and clinical. He needed a wife to satisfy the terms of his grandmother. She need money from bank save her family, same pill and bound. But the hand on her back didn't feel transactional. It felt protective. It felt real. Mr. Ashworth. Julian's smile flickered with uncertainty from the stage. I understand this must be difficult to hear, but as someone who cared deeply for Vivian, I felt you deserved to know who you deserved. Actually, married. Dominic positioned his body between Vivian and the watching crowd, blocking her from the phones, the stares, the judgment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet enough that people had to strain to hear, which only made every word land harder. What I know, Dominic said slowly, is that my wife's character speaks for itself. Her kindness, my strength, her strength, 100 witnesses, exactly who were. Julian's mask slipped, just for a moment, just long enough for Vivian to see the rage underneath, the twisted fury of a man who couldn't stand losing control. You don't know what she is really like, Julian's voice rose, what she is capable of. The manipulation, the lies, the calculated way she attaches herself to successful men and bleeds them dry. I know exactly what manipulation looks like. Dominic's tone dropped to something lethal. I recognized it the second you opened your mouth. The gaslighting, the public humiliation, making yourself the bee, while destroying someone else's reputation. He stepped forward. Actually step back. It always follow the same playbook, while it always ends the same way. Security materialized from the shadows. 4 men in dark suits, moving with professional precision toward the stage. Julian's composure cracked completely. You are making a mistake. She is using you just like she used me when she has drained your accounts and destroyed your reputation. Remember, I tried to warn you. The only warning anyone needs, Dominic replied calmly, is about you, and I suspect by tomorrow morning everyone in this room will have received a very detailed briefing about exactly who Julian Rhodes really is. The security team reached Julian, hands firmly guiding him away from the microphone, away from the stage, away from the ballroom. His protests echoed through the marble halls until a door closed. Silence fell again. Dominic turned to face the room. 500 people there beneath. I apologize for the interruption to tonight's event, he said, his voice returning to the smooth charm of a man who controlled boardrooms and billion-dollar deals. To children's literacy remains unchanged. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. And just like that, the string quartet resumed playing conversation. The party continued as if nothing had happened. Because when Dominic decided something was over, it was over. But Vivian couldn't move. Her legs had turned to water, her hands trembled at her sides. The adrenaline that had kept her standing during Julian's attack was draining away, leaving nothing but exhaustion and the ghost of old fears. Dominic's arm round her shoulders, wormice, dent warm, and hot her through the parting crowd, blocking her from in-blading phone saw. The night air hit her face like a splash of cold water. The car appeared within seconds, a black luxury vehicle that seemed to materialize from the darkness. Dominic helped her inside, and the door closed behind them, sealing them in silence and the farter of his prologue. Vivian pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching the city lights blur past. Her reflection stared back at her, pale and shaken, a woman who had thought she escaped her past, only to have thought she escaped her past. It chased her down in the most public way possible. Any minute now, Dominic would drop the act. He would ask her if Julian was telling the truth. He would look at her with that same cold suspicion he had worn since their wedding day, that careful distance that reminded her constantly that she was a transaction, not a partner. She waited for the accusations, the questions, the withdrawal. Instead, he said nothing. The car hummed through the city, carrying them toward the penthouse they shared, but never truly inhabited together, separate wings, separate lives, separate everything, except a marriage certificate and a business arrangement. "Tell me about him." Dominic's voice finally broke the silence, quiet and steady. Vivian's head turned sharply. "What?" "Julian Rhodes. Tell me the truth." The accusation, hidden in the word truth, as if everything about her was performance, had in more convey than 4 months of her living under Domina. "Why?" Her voice cracked with exhaustion and something that felt really close to anger. "If you can decide if I am worth chemoding, whether I am iging your pressure. Because I assure you, your lawyers were very clear about the terms of our arrangement. I don't owe you my history, Simone." 3 months of silence, of sleeping in opposite wings of his penthouse, of being parried at events like an accessory. It all came floating out. The fruiting out frustration and isolation and isolation had tried so hard to suppress. "You made it very clear what this marriage is, a transaction. You get your inheritance. I get enough money to save my family's restaurant from bankruptcy. That was the Mesquida Reese deal. You don't get to suddenly demand explanations when it is convenient for you." The car pulled up to their building. Vivian was out before it fully stopped, her heels clicking against marble as she headed for the private elevator. She jabbed the button repeatedly, willing the patedly doors to open before he could follow her, before she had to face any more questions she didn't have the strength to answer. "He is lying." The words stopped her cold. Vivian turned slowly. Dominic stood in the lobby, hands in his pockets, looking more uncertain than she had ever seen him. The controlled, distant billionaire was gone. In his place was a man who'd seemed almost vulnerable. "Everything Julian said tonight, I know he is lying, how?" The question came out as a whisper, barely audible over the fountain in the lobby's center. "Because I've spent 4 months watching you, Vivian." As she blinked, of all the responses she had expected, this wasn't them. "I've watched you volunteer at that youth culinary program every Saturday," Dominic continued, stepping closer, "teaching teenagers knife skills and food safety when you think no one's paying attention. I've seen how you redesigned the staff kitchen to be more efficient without asking for credit or recognition. I notice when you leave extra tips for the waitstaff at restaurants, because you remember what it was like to work those jobs yourself." Her chest tightened. These were the small pieces of herself she had tried to keep hidden, the parts of her identity she protected because Julian had taught her that showing who she really was, owned she, gave people ammunition to use against her. "I've seen your recipe notebooks," Dominic said softly, "the ones you fill with ideas for dishes you think no one will ever taste. You are talented, Vivian, brilliant. Even you could have asked me for anything these past 4 months, money, connections, access to investors. You've asked for nothing, because that wasn't the deal," she whispered. "No," his jaw tightened, "because you are nothing like what Julian claimed, and I should have seen that from the beginning." The elevator doors opened behind her, offering escape, but something in Dominic's eyes, something that looked almost like guilt, made her stay. "Julian is my ex-fiancé's brother." The revelation hit like a physical blow. Vivian's hand gripped the elevator door frame for support. "I didn't make the connection until tonight," Dominic continued, his voice heavy with self-recrimination. "Rachel used her mother's maiden name. Different circles, different social groups. I should have done more research before my lawyers approached you. I should have protected you better." Vivian's mind raced Rachel Ashworth, the woman whose photo had appeared in tabloids 3 years ago alongside stories about embezzlement and betrayal, the woman who had nearly bankrupted Dominic before their wedding by siphoning funds into offshore accounts. The woman whose exposure had made him the subject of public sympathy and private mockery. Your ex-fiancée, Vivian said slowly, who was very publicly caught emptying your accounts before your wedding. Yes. Dominic's smile was bitter, sharp, with old pain. So when my grandmother's will required marriage and my lawyers suggested an arrangement, someone who needed money for legitimate reasons, and Becca would walk away clean after two years, I thought I was being smart, protecting myself by assuming the worst, by treating you like you were just like her. The pieces clicked into place, his coldness, his distance, the way he watched her like she might steal the silverware. It wasn't cruelty, it was fearing a mask of indifference. I was wrong, Vivian. Dominic stepped closer, close enough that she could see the vulnerability he was trying so hard to hide. And tonight, when I saw you standing there facing down your abuser. Abuser, the word felt foreign, a clinical term for something she had never been able to name. That is what he is, Dominic said firmly. I recognized it the second he opened his mouth. The gaslighting, the public humiliation, the way he twisted himself into the victim while destroying you in front of everyone. His jaw clenched. My sister dated someone like that. It nearly destroyed her. I watched it happen, and I couldn't stop it. I won't make that mistake again. Vivian's knees weakened. 4 years with Julian, and no one, not one single person, had named it for what it was. Her friends had faded away. Her family had been kept at a distance. Everyone who might have seen the truth had been carefully removed from her life until she had no one left to tell her that she wasn't crazy, that she wasn't problem, that what was happening to her maybe, and it wasn't love. Tell me about him, Dominic repeated, softer this time, please. No, because I doubt you, because I want to understand, and because Julian isn't done. Men like him never are. The elevator doors began to close. Vivian caught them with her hand, holding them open while she made a decision she couldn't take back. Okay, she whispered, but not here. If this story is resonating with you, drop a comment below. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who made you feel small? Have you ever had to rebuild yourself from nothing? Your story matters, and this community is here for you. No, let's continue. They rode the elevator in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before. The air between them was charged with something new, something fragile, something that felt almost like the beginning of trying. Vivian's hands shook as she poured herself a glass of water in the kitchen, their kitchen technically, though she still thought of every space in this penthouse as his 4 months of marriage. She had been living like a ghost, haunting rooms she never felt she belonged in. I met Julian at a gallery opening, she began, the words feeling like pulling glass from a wound. It was about 5 years ago. I had just opened my restaurant, a small place in the arts district. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, and Julian was there, charming and successful and interested in my work. For the first time in my life, someone seemed to really see me. Dominic leaned against the counter across from her, giving her space but remaining present in a way he had never been before. He didn't interrupt, didn't question, just listened. As 6 months were perfect, he was attentive, supportive. He would show up at the restaurant, because he liked my family and completely, never seen me so happy. She laughed hospitably, the sound hollow in the sleek modern kitchen. Then things started to shift. Small things at first. He would critique my outfits, saying he was just trying to help me make a better impression. He would suggest my dishes needed adjustments, even though he knew nothing about cooking. He found something wrong with each of my friends. Maria was too loud. Destiny was too negative. Jordan was too flirty, probably trying to sleep with me. Vivian set down the water glass because her hands were shaking too badly to hold it. At the end of the first year, I had isolated myself, complete or wise, stopped calling because I always had an see them side wise kulf stealing from the restaurant. My family saw me less and less because Julian always had a reason why we couldn't visit. She met Dominic's eyes, and the understanding she saw there gave her courage to continue. He controlled everything. my schedule, my menu, who I talked to. If I got a new customer who loved my food, he would find a reason why they were taking advantage of me until I stopped reaching out. If a food critic wanted to feature my restaurant, he would convince me they were just looking for something to tear apart. My business was dying, and somehow it was always my fault. I wasn't working hard enough. I wasn't talented enough. I wasn't good enough. You were always good enough, Dominic said quietly, more than good enough. When his tech startup started failing, that became my fault too. Vivian's voice dropped. I wasn't supportive enough. I wasn't believing in him enough. I was so focused on my restaurant that I was neglecting him. The guilt was constant. I apologized for things I hadn't done. I changed who I was to avoid setting him off. I became someone I didn't recognize. She stared at her hands, remembering how they used to create beauty in the kitchen, how Julian had made her doubt even that. The night I finally left, he threw his phone across the room. It shattered against the wall inches from my head. He swore it was an accident, that I had made him so frustrated he couldn't think straight, that if I had just listened to him it never would have happened. Vivian looked up, meeting Dominic's gaze, direct ear. I looked at that shattered glass on the floor, and I saw my future. I saw myself 5 years later, 10 years later. Nothing but a shell of who I used to be. So I packed one bag while he was in the shower, and I walked out the door with nothing but my clothes and my car keys. What about the restaurant? Dominic asked. I had put his name on everything, because he convinced me it was a smart financial. The restaurant, my saving, everything. I didn't care. I just need out. That is why your family's business became your only option for money. I had nothing left, no business, no business. When my father had his heart attack 6 months later, and the medical bills started piling up, when my family's restaurant started failing because he couldn't run it alone, I was desperate. Vivian wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold, despite the penthouse's perfect climate control. When your lawyers approached me with the arrangement, it seemed like a miracle. 2 years of pretending to be married, enough money to save everything I loved. I never wanted to trap you, Dominic. I never wanted anything from you except the chance to save my family. He crossed the distance between them slowly, giving her time to step back if she wanted. She didn't move. I am sorry, he said, and the words seemed painful for him to speak. I kept you at arm's because I was to see the truth. Why'd he try to know? That is worse, said Green Eyes. Start to know. That is worse, says Green Eyes. Search. His green eyes search. So, can we start over? His green eyes search. Before she could process, phone buzzed. Then again, rapid-fire notifications that made his expression darken as he pulled the device from his pocket. What is it? Hall is it Ha's asked pocket. Then again, rapid voice was flat, controlled, dangerous. Screenshots of text messages, a whole compare, then design destroy you. Phone with trembling hands. Her stomach dropped as she pent and match really. Words she had never told, like she had been planned to leave John for Dominic. Was the relationship and darling. He all carefully Krodiga, who had trade up tabby supli from, full 50 contracts, or still eating too short. Fokker vis pekulinjas, 2 reservation cancellations. A food blogger who had been planning a feature suddenly no longer interested. He is destroying everything, Vivian said, her voice breaking. Everything I've been trying to save. No, Dominic took both phones and set them aside, forcing her to look at him. He is not. You don't understand. Julian is connected. He knows people. He'll make sure everyone believes his version. He always does. Then we show them the truth. Dominic was already moving, his mind clearly shifting into the strategic mode that had built his empire. I have investigators, lawyers, people who specialize in exactly this kind of situation. If he doctored those messages, we can prove it. And I guarantee Julian has skeletons we can find. I don't want revenge. The words surprised even Vivian as they left her mouth. Dominic stopped, turning back to face her. I just want him to stop, she continued. I want the truth out there. I want my family's restaurant to survive. I want to stop being afraid every time I walk into a room that he'll be there, waiting to destroy me all over again." He studied her face for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. "Something that is what we'll do." He walked back to her, reaching out to take her hand in his. Together, the word settled between them like a promise says. Then that a promise seftes I, inu and cherifaliti the next 3 days. Dominic's team worked around the clock while Vivian provided everything she could remember. Old emails from accounts she thought she had deleted. The real text threads that showed Julian's controlling behavior. Names of friends who had witnessed his manipulation before they were pushed out of her life. And they found more, so much more. 2 other women came forward, with mirrored Vivian's so closely it made her sick. The same patterns, the same isolation tactics, the same gradual destruction of dignity. Julian had done this before her, and he had done it after her, and each time he had walked away clean while his victims rebuilt their lives from rebuild. His company was under investigation for fraud. Investors were quietly pulling out. The charming facade that Julian presented to the world was crumbling, and underneath it was something rotten that could no longer be hidden. We can release all of this. Dominic's lead attorney spread documents across the dining room table, the evidence building a damning picture. The fraud investigation alone would destroy his career. Combined with the testimonies from the other women, he would never recover professionally or socially. Vivian looked at the files spread before her. The power to end Julian completely sat within her reach. Every cruel word he had ever spoken, every manipulation tactic he had ever used, every lie he had ever used. All of it documented. Part of her wanted it, the justice, the revelation, Fabavant she had never allowed herself to dream about. Because dreaming about fighting back meant admitting just how badly she had been hurt. Another part of her, the part Ian had never met, another part of her. The woman who fed strangers just because they were hungry. The woman who taught teenagers to cook because everyone deserved to know the joy of creating something beautiful. The woman who believed that how you treated people mattered more than what you could get from them. Just the truth, she said finally, pushing away the more damaging files. The messages, statements from the other women if they consent to share them. Nothing else. The lawyer stared at her. "Miss Ashworth, with this evidence, they could become him. If they could become him, if they can sunk her head, I won't do that. I won't let him turn me into someone who destroys people because they have the power to do it. The truth is enough." Dominic's hand covered hers on the table, warm and steady. His eyes met hers with something that looked like wonder. "You could never become him," he said softly. The press release went out at noon the following day. By evening, Julian's company board had called an emergency meeting that ended with his forced resignation. By midnight, his social media accounts were deleted, his public image in ruins, his carefully constructed world collapsing under the weight of nothing more than the truth. Vivian stood on the penthouse balcony, watching the city lights stretch toward the horizon, feeling lighter than she had in years. The weight she fled with nothing but a single bag had finally lifted. No, because Julian was destroyed, but because she no longer had to hide, no longer had to be afraid, no longer had to pretend that what happened to her didn't matter. The glass door slid open behind her. "Is it?" She turned to face him, and the city lights caught the question in her eyes. "What happens now? We still have 20 months left in our arrangement." He was quiet for a long moment, and Vivian felt her heart begin to race with a different kind of fear, the fear of hoping for something that might not be real. "I misjudged you from the start," Dominic finally said. He stepped closer, near enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "You are the strongest person I've ever met, the most genuine, the most kind." His hand reached up, fingers ghosting along her jaw so gently, she almost thought she imagined it. "What if we made this real?" Vivian's breath caught in her throat. "I am falling for you," he continued, and the vulnerability in his voice matched the uncertainty in his eyes. "Maybe I have been since the moment you chose mercy over revenge, maybe longer. Maybe since the first time I saw you teaching those teenagers to cook, completely unaware that anyone was watching, just doing it because you wanted to, Dominic. His thumb brushed her cheek, catching a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Tell me I am not alone in this. The city sprawled below them, millions of lights, millions of lives, millions of lives, millions of possibilities. And Vivian realized that she was standing at the edge of something terrifying and wonderful and completely unexpected. A chance to be loved, not despite her past, but with full knowledge of it. A chance to trust someone who had earned it, not through grand gestures, but through small, consistent choices. You are not alone. The confession escaped before fear could stop it. I've been falling for you too. Somewhere between the morning coffees you started leaving outside my door and the way you actually listen when I talk about food like it matters. Somewhere between watching you defend me without hesitation and learning that you were just as scared as I was. His smile transformed his entire face, erasing the cold distance she had once thought was permanent. Everything about you matters, he whispered. He kissed her then, soft and questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Instead, Vivian leaned in, her hands finding his chest, solid and real, finally close enough to touch. When they broke apart, both breathless, Dominic pressed his forehead to hers. I want to do this right, he said. Court you properly. Take you on actual dates, earn you instead of assuming I already have you because of a piece of paper. We're already married, she laughed, the sound surprised out of her. That is a strange order for things. Then let me make it up to you. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her close. 20 months of making it up to you. And then, if you'll have me, the rest of our lives. If you are rooting for Vivian and Dominic right now, smash that like button and share this video with someone who believes in second chances. Because this story is about to get even more beautiful. The months that followed were nothing like Vivian had expected when she signed that contract in a lawyer's office, trading 2 years of her life for enough money to save her family. There were actual dates, dinners at restaurants where Dominic asked her opinion on every dish and actually listened to her assessments. Walks through the city where he learned her favorite places and why they mattered to her. Mornings where she woke up to find him in the kitchen, attempting to make breakfast with more enthusiasm than skill. "I'm a work in progress," he said sheepishly. The first time she found him, fro by Borkenjauschend Poke Freisgau Betitida Zamoti. Had laughed so hard she cried, and then she had taken how to heapets properly, sty a stydin feel his heart beer, close enough that she could feel his heart beat. Close enough that when he turned to look at her, their lips were only inches apart. There were difficult days too, moments when the old fears crept back in, when Julian's voice echoed in her memory telling her she wasn't good enough, when trust felt like a cliff she wasn't sure she could jump off. But Dominic was patient. He didn't push. He didn't demand. He simply stayed, present and consistent and gentle in ways that slowly convinced her that not everyone who loved her would eventually use that love as a weapon. "I have something to show you," he said one evening. 3 months into their real relationship, he drove her to a building she didn't recognize, a restaurant space that had been empty for months. The windows were dark, the interior bare, but when he unlocked the door and turned on the lights, Vivian gasped. It was perfect, an open kitchen concept that let diners watch their food being prepared, exposed brick walls that gave warmth to the space, and tables she had always dreamed of having, enough to make a living but not so many that she couldn't know her time. "I was a Mars. I was you in you here. I'm imagining you here pre-epi na you would create. I imagine in you here. I'm imagining you. I'm imagining you here." Vivian walked through the space in a daze, her hands trailing over countertops and equipment, her mind already filling the emptiness with dishes and customers, and the life she had thought Julian had stolen from her forever. "This is too much," she whispered. "It is not enough." Dominic followed her, letting her set the pace. "You lost everything because someone who claimed to love you used that love to control you. You deserve the chance to build it back on your own terms." She turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. "I don't need this," she said. "The restaurant, the money, any of it. I just need you. I need you to know that I would have fallen in love with you if you had nothing at all. He pulled her into his arms, and she felt his own tears fall against her hair. I know, he said. That is exactly why I want to give you everything. The restaurant opened 10 months later. Vivian named it Second Chances because that is what it represented. A second chance at her dreams, a second chance at love, a second chance at believing that she deserved good things even when someone had spent years trying to convince her otherwise. Opening night was terrifying and wonderful and everything she had imagined. The kitchen with controlled chaos was about tea wows with friends and family and food, critics and strangers who had heard about this new place and wanted to see what the fuss was about. Dominic arrived near the end of service, still in his business suit, sliding into the seat at the corner of the bar that he had claimed as his own during the months of construction and testing. "How does it feel?" he asked when she finally had a moment to breathe. "Like coming home," Vivian said, "and terrifying. And wonderful." He reached across the bar to take her hand. He said, "No, me no. My mother, Tikarudi Wifade, if you had stopped believe you had start believe it. Fevered coffee. Bika bury me first what of our feedback." 1 year after the night, Julian tried to destroy her. Vivian woke to morning light streaming through the windows of the bedroom she now shared with her husband. No, the stranger she had married for money, but the man she had fallen in love with somewhere between his terrible attempts at breakfast and his unwavering faith in her ability to rebuild. She'd sleep, his face relaxed and peaceful, such a contrast to the controlled mask he wore in the business world. This was the real Dominic, the one who got excited about new recipe ideas and asked thoughtful questions about her process. The one who had shown up at the youth culinary program one Saturday and spent 3 hours teaching teenagers about business plans because he wanted to be part of what mattered to her. "You are thinking too loud," he murmured without opening his eyes. "Come back to bed." I was remembering the night of the gala. His eyes opened then, concern flickering across his features. "The worst night of your life, no." She moved back under the covers, settling into the curve of his body like she had been made to fit there. "The night everything started to change. The night you called me your wife and actually meant it. I should have meant it from the beginning." His arms tightened around her. "I wasted 4 months being afraid. We were both afraid." She pressed a kiss to his shoulder. "We both had reasons, but we figured it out together." "Together, there is something I need to tell you." Vivian leaned back to look at him, her heart stuttering with the old fear that good things could be taken away at any moment. But Dominic was smiling. "The foundation board met yesterday. They want to expand the youth culinary program to 5 more cities, full funding. Your curriculum, your vision, they want you to lead it. You changed those kids' lives, Vivian. You showed them that cooking isn't just about food. It is about confidence and creativity and believing in yourself. The board saw the results, and the results they want to bring that to kids everywhere." Vivian burst into tears, and Dominic held her while she cried, understanding without being told that these were tears of joy, tears of disbelief, tears of finally accepting that she was allowed to have dreams come true. "I love you," she said when she could speak again. "No, because of this. No, because of the restaurant or the program or any of it. I love you because you saw me when I couldn't see myself, because you protected me without trying to control me, because you believed I was strong enough to save myself and then stood beside me while I did it." "I love you too," he said, "more than I knew I was capable of. You taught me that trusting someone doesn't have to mean getting hurt, that partnership can be strength instead of weakness, that choosing someone can mean being chosen in return." He kissed her then, slow and certain, and Vivian felt the last of her old fears dissolve like morning mist. She was home, no because of the penthouse or the restaurant or any physical place, but because of this man who had seen her shattered and chose her anyway. This man who had his own wounds and had let her help heal them while he helped heal hers. This man who had taught her that love, real love, was not about control or possession or power. It was about showing up, staying present, choosing each other again and again, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. "I have one more surprise," Dominic said, pulling back with a grin that made him look years younger. I don't know if my heart can take any more surprises today. This one you'll like." He reached into the bedside table drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Vivian's breath stopped. "We're already married," he said, echoing her words from the night they first kissed. "But I want to do it again, properly this time, in front of everyone who matters to us. Because you deserve a wedding that is about love, not contracts. And I want the whole world to know that you are my wife, not because a piece of paper says so, but because I would choose you every single day for the rest of my life." He opened the box to reveal a ring that was nothing like the practical band she had been wearing for the past year. This one was elegant and beautiful and perfect, a diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like captured stars. "Vivian Mercer Ashworth," he said softly, "will you marry me again? For real this time?" "Yes." The word came out through tears and laughter. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He slid the finger beside her original tea, close, and the morning light arout avows. "Eripe 80s offi, watu chu, au say chu, never get a second chance. Some people are too afraid to take one even when it is offi." But Vivian and Dominic had both learned the hard way that fear might keep you safe, but it also keeps you alone. That trusting again after betrayal is the bravest thing a person can do. That love, real love, is not about never getting hurt. It is about finding someone worth the risk. Six stood in a garden full of flowers, by family and friends, and said their shuge, who bevin. At this time, something different, to believe in your shugao, to believe in your shugade. Promise shubides stugao. Family feed in her size neving his shugaze. I promise to, but because there is no version of my life that makes sense without you in it. Promise to trust you with my whole heart, what be called. I heard, fought Sheddy despite the streaming down her face. I promise to be brave enough to let you love me. Hamas with our pasts and reaches toward a future, harvest could have imad. This time for the clouds, with you to have hests, were thou to has bats, they walked back down the Azaz bend, and wath this time for roke through the sun, wo clouds like a sign, from the clouds like a sign. As they swayed to their first dance as a properly married couple, Dominic close to whisper in her vang what duliandest business decision. I ever made fair doubt you, Gaminid close tot. This stopped being business a long time ago. That is when I knew what? Was actually my soulmate, that I had somehow gotten this tribe, without I knew about protecting, was wide, was wrong, and that the only real safety is trusting someone else with your heart. 4 months of loneliness in a cold arrangement. Months of healing and learning and falling in love with someone who saw her clearly and loved her anyway. When they broke apart, both grinning like they had discovered a secret the rest of the world was still searching for, Vivian whispered, "Take me home." "We're already home," Dominic replied, and she realized he was right. Home was not the penthouse or the restaurant or even this beautiful garden. Home was being seen, being chosen, being loved for exactly who she was, scars and all. The girl who rebuilt herself from nothing, the woman who chose grace when she had every right to choose revenge. The wife who was loved finally and completely, not in spite of her past, but because of the strength it had forged in her. If this story touched your heart, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment sharing what resonated most with you. Maybe it was vague courage to trust again. Maybe it was Dominic learning to let down his walls. Maybe it was the reminder that your past doesn't define your future. Whatever it was, share it below. This community is built on connection, and your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Don't forget to like this video if you believe in second chances. Subscribe if you want more stories about love and redemption and finding your way back to yourself. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. And remember this, no matter what anyone has told you, no matter what you've been through, no matter how broken you feel right now, your story isn't over. The best chapters might still be waiting to be written. Until next time, take care of your hearts. They're stronger than you know.